Welcome back to another episode of Unwritten with me, Thomas Malpass. Today I have the incredible Dana S. Diaz, the author of Gasping for Air, The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse. Dana's journey is one of resilience, healing, and in our discussion we cover a variety of topics, including her personal background, the impact that childhood trauma has had on her entire life up until this point, navigating toxic relationships all throughout her life, and finding the path to self-respect and setting boundaries. We also move through her experiences of the trauma and relationships and explore practical insights on healing and overcoming the aftermath of narcissistic abuse. Before we dive into the episode, hit that subscribe and leave a rating and review wherever you're listening, as it supports the show, supports me, and supports the community of people who listen and come back every week to listen to impactful stories. Dana S. Diaz, everybody. Enjoy. Welcome to the Unwritten Podcast with your host, Thomas Malpass, where we are on a mission to help the world find more purpose, passion, and peace in their everyday lives. Through deep conversations and connection, tune in because we are all on this journey of life together. How's your day been?
Like every other day, it's like Groundhog Day. Every day is the same, just different people. But it's a good thing. I like the variety. Writing, talking, works well. What part of the world are you in?
You've been writing and talking a
Yeah,
lot?
that's all I do.
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay. I'm in Illinois.
Yeah.
Not exciting. Sucks here, but here I am.
Sounds cold.
Yeah, it's not where I want to be. Not where I want to be, but the husband likes it, so, he's older. Theoretically, when he goes senile, I'll take him where I want to go, and it'll be south, somewhere with beaches and palm trees, and he won't know where he's at anyway, so it'll be fine.
Oh, man. Yeah, I prefer warmer
Me too.
areas.
Yeah. My family's
sure.
from Puerto Rico, so yeah, I'm like 80 degrees and humid and hot. I can do that. I love Texas, Arizona, anything out west and south. I'll even take Florida, even though the humidity gets sticky and yucky, but hey, it's better than here. It's just, but it could be worse, so no complaints. I'm inside a house where I can control the temperature and
Right.
life is good here. I'm like a squirrel with a nut. I just hide out and eat and do my thing, and I don't even know what's going on out there.
Where are you from? You have a unique accent.
Chicago. Yeah, I know. Everybody says I have
It's
an
kind of
accent.
Boston-y.
Is it? Yeah, I've never
Kind of
been
Boston-y.
to Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a Chicago accent.
Yeah,
I
it
don't know.
probably is. I've been told that. Like somebody was like, "You sound like Dennis Franz on NYPD Blue." I'm like, I hope I don't sound like that, but
A little bit of like Canadian too.
really?
I hear a little bit like, yeah.
Well, my publisher's in Canada, and I've been working for them for a few years. They speak French, though, and I don't. They speak English, thank God for me, but maybe I'm picking up on something. But I mean, you are I'm trying to look here, 141, you're my 142nd podcast, so I'm talking to
wow.
people all over the world, so God only knows what I sound like and who knows. But it's all good.
You're my 35th.
Okay, cool.
You'll be my 35th.
Yay.
But right now I've only published tomorrow will be 19.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of work and all that editing and everything, so.
Yeah, people don't realize how much work
Oh,
it
it's
takes
a lot.
to podcast.
Yeah, that's why everybody's like, you should have your own. I'm like, no, I'll just be a guest on everyone else's because I'm not technologically really. I mean, it's a wonder I can do this, but no, I don't want to edit.
Yeah, you have
Then
to.
the promotion and
There's a
all
lot of
that.
work.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
And I respect you guys for
social
that.
media. Um, but we can dive right into it.
Yeah, let's go. I'm a good sheep. Just lead me where you want me to go, and I'll go there. Anything is good. Nothing's off limits. I'm game.
You have good humor.
Oh, thank
I
you.
like your humor. Yeah. Well, I start every podcast pretty much the same way. I ask the pretty much a general question, and the question is, can you please share some experiences growing up that basically shaped who you are today?
Mm.
And yeah.
Okay, we're gonna open that can of worms. It's gonna just come out at us. Let's do it.
Yeah,
So do you
go
want me
ahead.
to just go for it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, that it's a good question because my book that came out is about my former marriage, which a lot of people that know me or have met me are like, "How did you fall victim to abuse and how could you submit and all these different things?" And it absolutely goes back to my childhood experiences. And I think the crux of everything in my life, and I'm 48 years old now, and I can admit it now and realize it as I'm delving into my past, to try to heal all this trauma, is just it goes back to my mother. And, I know people get tired of hearing the whole, oh, it's not the parents' fault all the time. Well, it actually was in my case. I mean, the reality is that I was born to a teenage mother. My mother was 16 when she got pregnant with me. She was not happy about it. She didn't want me. She has openly talked about how she wished that, abortion had been more widely available, that she wished she would have given
Wow.
me up for adoption. So, and I will also add that immediately after my birth, she had her tubes tied so that she couldn't have kids at all.
Wow.
And so to have your tubes tied at that age, I'm guessing she didn't want kids at all. Yet she kept me. The story is that grandma and great grandma said no grandchild or great grandchild of ours is going to be raised by strangers. We are going to raise this kid. So grandma said she would go get a job and pay for my expenses. Great grandma said she would raise me, thereby relieving my mother of any responsibility to me. So life was good.
Mm.
Great grandma was wonderful. She would, I mean, as far as I knew, because obviously I was very young. I was a baby and a toddler. As far as I could see, she was my mother. I mean, I watched cartoons. I could see mommies and daddies and babies and all that. And no, there wasn't a father figure, but great grandma was the one who fed me. Great grandma was the one who gave me baths and made sure I had clean clothes and soothed me when I was upset and all the things a mother should do. And I felt very loved. At some point, and I still don't know who thought it was a good idea, my mother did meet somebody, decided to get married, and everybody, I guess, decided I should go be with my mother now that she was going to be married and establish her life, I guess. And that's basically when my life took a really, really sharp left turn, and the Dana that you see here was created. And yes, you see smiles, and I try to be funny and all that, and I'm healing every day, but it's been a rough road. And so here's what happened. My mother decided to marry an older man who had already lied to her. He was married. He did not tell his current wife that he was dating my mother for a year. Um, he was doing a double life there. My mother somehow thought this was okay, which we won't go there. That's a whole other podcast about your moral compass. But at some point, he got divorced, and my mother and I went to live with him. Well, he wanted me even less than my mother wanted me. So my mother, who, I mean, she was basically the only person that I knew, for lack of better words, in this new life, because he lived away from our friends and family. He lived away from my school, my friends, everything I had known in my entire life, I was taken away from to go live with this man. And my mother was trying to turn me into, and herself, into the type of people that were in her new husband's neighborhood. Meaning, in the city, we're Puerto Rican. My great grandma and my grandma talked to me in Spanish. I was rolling my R's. I had curly hair and everything. My mother's hair was even curlier, but it was like, don't tell anyone we're Puerto Rican. Stop rolling your R's. She would straighten my hair, just let everybody think he's your dad. Nobody needs to know that, about your real dad. And I didn't even know about my real dad. Honestly, I didn't know I had a dad at all. I just thought I had great grandma. So it was all very disturbing, to be told, don't be who you are, lie about who you are. She even had my name changed. She had her husband put on my birth certificate as my biological father, which was disturbing in itself because he was not nice to me at all. At first, he was just verbally abusive to me, but it was harsh. And I always tell people, think of like a 5 or 6 year old little kid. He was telling me, nobody's ever going to love you. I shouldn't have to pay for another man's child. You should be grateful that I'm feeding you and giving you shelter. Just nasty things. Always making me feel less than, incompetent, undeserving, unworthy. So naturally, I would go to my mother. She's supposed to protect me and be the person who defends me. And she would tell me that I'm lying. She would say, well, I talked to him about it. He said you're lying to get attention. You're just jealous of our relationship now that he's in the picture. So it was really frustrating because, to say I have trust issues, when I can't even trust my own mother to protect and defend me, and I can't trust this man who she put in my life as my father figure to trust and protect me, who do I turn to? So I learned to start keeping things to myself. But then I'd go to school with marks and bruises, handprints. Kids would start asking, why do you have a bruise on your forehead? Why do you have handprints on your neck? Where did that bruise on your arm come from? Then the teachers started asking questions, and I was always smiling and saying, oh, I ran into something. I fell. We played hockey in gym class, whatever. Making excuses because I was terrified to go home. Because at this point, the verbal abuse escalated into physical. But again, my mother just turned the other way, just acted like it wasn't happening. Even when she was witness to it, she would just say, oh, well, you shouldn't make him so upset. So that's how I grew up. And certainly, by the time I was a teenager, I was at the point like, I'm never having a child. I will never do this to a child. I don't want to be responsible for a child. I actually want to grow up and help other children because at one point child services did get involved. But they also believed, my mother and stepfather, that, oh, Dana's just mentally disturbed. She makes up these stories and she self-inflicts wounds. And, they had all these explanations to cover their butts. And unfortunately...
Wait, so CPS,
yeah.
CPS came?
They did. And they didn't do much of an investigation. They basically just interviewed some neighbors, interviewed the people that worked for my mother and stepfather. You see, they own their own business. So, of course, their employees were going to speak kindly about them. They wanted their jobs. So it just got turned back onto me. And
did they interview you?
They did. The police came to my school and picked me up. But honestly, at that point, I was already a teenager. I had done this for enough years to know that nothing was going to work in my favor. Nobody believed me. So I didn't say a whole lot.
What
just basically...
time period was this?
This was back in, 1990, 1991, somewhere around there. I was probably 16,
So,
17
it was
years
a
old.
different time.
Yeah, because now you can't even look at your
Now-
kids sideways without them knocking on your door.
No, yeah, I had CPS called on me by my own brother.
Oh, wow.
Because, yeah, it was something I had to let go and forgive, but it was because my ex was I mean, this comes up a lot in my podcast, but my ex was like just an alcoholic, drinking all the time, belligerent,
Mm.
obnoxious, just not fully there for uh, our children. Um, so yeah, my brother just they just knocked on our door one day and we were like, what's going on? And they did like a
Wow.
welfare check, and yeah, I had no idea until like months later that it was my brother. Um, but yeah, it's because it's different because you don't. It's like, oh, like you see somebody in your family's hurting, and my family likes to like barge in and like try to get involved, and it's like sometimes you have to let people figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
There's a time and place to ask for help, but yeah, I had CPS called on me, and luckily, um, they were understanding about everything, and um, it went smooth. But
Well, I'm glad it did. Yeah,
yeah,
I have mixed feelings about that because I think there's so, I mean, when I was a kid, I was begging. I mean,
you want to be
I
helped.
needed
Yeah.
somebody to see what was happening,
Hmm.
but I was so scared to let on, to tattle, because I was
Why
afraid
were you
nobody would
scared?
believe me. Well, because I knew that if I exposed them, one, my mother was going to make excuses and make up stories to cover up for her husband, and her husband would probably, there would be worser consequences, for exposing him. And I think that's very common in abusive situations. I mean, you're, of course, terrified of your abuser. And I was a smart kid. I mean, I
Mm,
saw, I had seen, I'd been living it. I knew the odds were against me because what was I going to do? And the other part of it is that we were in a wealthier suburb with this man, so I forgive me for saying this, but I feel like at least in my situation, people were getting away with things a little easier because from outside appearances, I was wearing the brand name clothes. We had a nice house out in public. We were
yeah.
presenting as the perfect family. I knew what my role was and I played it. And, it looked like, oh, she's just a difficult, spoiled little brat, making these things up, about her parents. And, it wasn't like some inner city situation where, people are living in poverty and there's no food. You know what I mean? And but back then too, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's really sad, but I don't know if you've ever read the book A Child Called It, but if you haven't, read it. Anybody that's interested in child abuse, it came out in the early 90s. It's a true story. Um, but the horrific things that boy went through, that was in California, and I think it's considered the worst case in California
Sorry, you're freezing up
history of
there a
child
little bit.
abuse. But the things that happened, and child services got involved on his behalf numerous times, but he had one parent inflicting the abuse and the other parent, like my mother, looking away. Yes, A Child Called It. It's a book that came out in the early 90s, and it was about one of the worst cases in California child abuse history and the horrific things that this little boy went through. And he was one of five children. I believe he was the third out of five children. He was the only one that was abused out of the five. And the other kids saw it,
Hmm.
and I think it was, they were just so unfazed by it, which was shocking. Like they knew it was happening. They even, I don't want to say participated, but they certainly enabled it. And it was only one parent inflicting the abuse only on that child. The other parent, like my mother, would just turn away and act like it wasn't happening, or would slightly acknowledge it, but just tell the child, well, just lay low, fly under the radar. And I mean, I related to that so much, even though I never went through half, I mean, not even a portion of what this poor kid went through. But child services intervened on his behalf numerous times because the school, teachers, administration, they could see what was going on, and he was never taken away. So it's just really, I don't know if it speaks to how times were different in the early 90s. Obviously we've come a longer way, but it is really sad to know, and even from state to state, that there are children in horrific situations that are still with their parents because of whatever situation. As a matter of fact, I had somebody that I met at one of my book signings that was telling me about, a situation with the man that she was with who was abusing her and her daughters. And when somebody did call the police on them, there was a gun involved, I guess. The police came and asked the young girl, one of the daughters, did he shoot the gun or did he put it to your head or whatever it was that he had done? And she was nervous because he's right there. He could hear her. So she said no. She said, my mother was lying. I don't know anything about that. I didn't see anything. So even though it happened, she was scared to out her abuser. And I think that's definitely a common, situation that we fall into.
Why do you think we're like so afraid?
Fear.
Of
who wants to be hurt? Whether it's physical hurt or whatever. And in a lot of these situations, I mean, when you're talking about domestic violence, I mean, you're scared for your life. So,
when you were growing up, did you have any friends, or like did you find any sort of safe zone where you felt like you could relax? Or
when I was not at the house, I felt like I could relax. I did have a couple of close friends, two in particular, but the thing about them was that it's because they didn't call attention to anything, and that was what really stood out about them. Like other kids, would just, kids are so point blank sometimes, like, just come up and point and say, what happened to your head? Or why do you have a bruise there? And you're like, it gets you upset. My actual friends, those couple of girls that I was friends with, they didn't ask me any questions. They could tell if I seemed a little more withdrawn one day, or if I had my hair pulled down a little more over my face, or wearing, a turtleneck or whatever it was. They didn't ask. They knew I was suffering inside. So, but they treated me like they treated everybody else. And to this day, that's something that really, I don't want to say works with me, but, whenever I've had perhaps something that happened that I'm down or whatever, I don't like the attention. I don't want to be treated any different. I just want to be treated normal like every other person. I don't want attention being called to any of my emotions or feelings, because as a kid, if I expressed emotions or had opinions or had feelings, that was met with abuse as well. I was just supposed to shut up and sit down and listen. And I couldn't, because I'm me, and I was tenacious, probably more then than I am now. But I knew it was wrong, because thank God I had that early foundation of what love really felt like, and what it, how you're supposed to treat other human beings. And so I knew that how I was being treated was wrong. So I tried to stand up for myself.
With your grandma?
Yeah,
your
great grandma, exactly.
Okay.
So, I mean, I thank God for that, but, then there's other times that I'm like, yeah, but if I didn't have that, then I wouldn't have known I was being treated wrong. So I don't know what's better. They say ignorance is bliss.
Do you think it was, I hate that. I always tell people ignorance is not bliss.
No, I agree.
Like it can be bliss to a certain extent, but then that's exactly what it is. You're just being ignorant.
Right.
Because when you are not ignorant, you can be enlightened by the knowledge or whatever that you come to find out or you're running away from or whatever.
Fair. Depends on the situation and the context, I think, though, because
Yeah,
for
it's like
me,
when I think of ignorant is bliss, I think of like if somebody's cheating on you,
okay,
I'd rather not know. That's
yes,
ignorance is bliss, right? Like I'd rather not know that they're cheating on me, but it's doing you a disservice in the
100%.
long term.
Yeah.
So that's like one example that I could think of there where it's like, wait a minute, ignorance is not bliss because the supposed love of your life is cheating on you, and that's being ignorant to the fact, whether you know or not know, or you're trying to bury it under the rug, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to that's a whole other subject too. I dealt with that in my former marriage. There was a lot of infidelity, and it got to the point where I just didn't even ask anymore. I didn't want to know who, what, when, where, why. That I knew it was happening, and that was enough. I didn't need to know the details. But like I look at ignorance as bliss. Like if I'm a kid, like when I was little, and great grandma cooked a lot of rice because it was cheap and we were Puerto Rican and we ate a lot of rice. I was perfectly
Same here.
happy having a bowl of white rice every day. If I had beans or a piece of meat with it, that was great, but I was happy with white rice. So, no, it didn't serve me any purpose or didn't affect me to know that there's kids in this world who actually got a piece of meat and mashed potatoes and a tray of
Steak.
lasagna, yeah, steak, caviar, whatever. But you know what I mean? So
That makes
it
sense
didn't
too,
affect
though.
me. But
That makes sense.
yeah, I mean, but that's the thing about childhood. I think that the good part of everything that happened was that I realized what my childhood taught me with my mother and stepfather taught me what I didn't want my life to be. And I guess that's the good that came out of it because I try to look at the positive of things. So when I did, get married and decided, we were going to have a baby, I was scared because they say you always turn into your parents. And I was like, there's no way I want to put a child through any part of what I went through. But I made
I
a
think if you're
choice.
aware, I
Yes.
think if you're aware of that, that's like the first step. You like, oh, you don't want to be like your parents. Okay. You're aware of that fact, so don't let it happen.
100%, but a lot of people don't do that because a lot of people look at my childhood, and actually I'm just finishing up. I'm releasing a book about my childhood this year, and I'm just finishing up the edits on it. And what a lot of people say is that, oh, well, your parents probably abused you because they didn't know better. And yes, my mother and stepfather both came from abusive circumstances, very abusive. But I agree with
Yeah.
you. It is a choice because they ended up having a child together. My mother, he, this
Wait,
man,
I thought her
yes,
tubes were
this
tied.
man had to have a baby so bad that from third grade
She
to eighth
untied
grade,
her tubes.
6 years I think it took. Yes, they went through multiple procedures and surgeries to have her tubes untied. It's called a reversal tubal ligation. Who
That's
knew that was
crazy.
even possible? But I think everything's possible anymore.
Anything's possible
They eventually
today.
had their child, and it's just like that book I said, A Child Called It. If you had my brother standing here next to me right here this very moment, he would tell you that the same people that raised me that also raised him were the best parents that ever could be. And I am telling you, well, I wrote a book about it. Let's just put it that way. That's how bad it was for me. And it screwed me up for life. And that's not nice. I don't like to say that about myself. It definitely affected me. It has made me struggle in places of my life that
It
I
was
would have
a
not had to struggle if I was raised by people who encouraged me and supported me.
yeah.
And I don't know, maybe tried to like me a
It was
little
just
bit.
an adversity.
Yeah.
It was an adversity and challenge of life. It didn't screw you up.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
said that
a
very
challenge that you
flippantly.
had to face. Yeah, it
Exactly.
was just a challenge that you had to face that
But I had to do it
um
alone. And there's something really
yeah.
damaging to your psyche when you can't even trust your mother whose womb you came out of. to be that support and to be that person that has your back. It's an awful, awful feeling. And yes, I had grandma, and yes, I had great grandma, but it's not the same. And it's hard to
You felt
explain that to
alone.
people, that maybe weren't adopted or something, but it's something that I've definitely just trying to figure out my existence and my place in this world. I struggled to belong. I struggle to figure out. I still have issues sometimes fitting in where exclusion is a big trigger for me. And it's something I've
Mm.
had to work through because of it. Abandonment issues, they just, plague my
So
relationships, but I get there. I'm aware of it, and I know I just have to kind of intellectualize it so it doesn't have those adverse effects now.
yeah. So you, as a teenager, you said being out of the
Oh,
house,
yeah.
being with some
And
friends
busy.
was your way. Yeah, busy out of the house doing something not there.
Exactly.
Um, but you also said you wanted to be treated normal.
Yeah.
But I think that's a like I don't want to like come off as like brash or something, but it's like that's not normal. So
Right.
you should be treated with more empathy, sympathy, somebody uh more compassion than somebody uh that's just normal that hasn't gone through that. That's my take on it.
For me, it
Um
was about I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to be treated
you
differently
wanted to fit
because I
in.
was trying to fit in. Ding, ding, ding. Because I didn't fit in at home. I wasn't even like there was nothing about me and my mother that made sense to me. Like, I mean, there were times where I'm like, am I an alien? Was I like just like beamed down here to cause her conflict? Because we're nothing like each other. And then I have this man, berating me every day for my existence and for breathing and telling me as a matter of fact, when my mother did get pregnant with her husband's baby, he told me straight out that when that baby was born, the three of them would be a family, and that I was not part of that family. So I mean, yes, I was struggling
uh
to I just wanted I felt like I was a puzzle piece trying to find my place and trying to force myself into, like, I almost fit here, I
Wherever you could
almost
find
fit
it.
there,
Yeah.
but and I mean, let's look at literally, like, I mean, I didn't know this back then, but looking back, I mean, attachment issues developed because of that. That's where my abandonment and rejection issues, developed. Codependency. I mean, there was a lot there, and I'm still unpacking it
Yeah.
now at 48 years old. I mean, I'm so
Yeah.
thankful that I'm aware, and that I've been able to help a lot of other people, and it's helped me self-reflect on my own situation. But it's something that stays with you for life, that you're always working on.
Yeah, it's a trauma,
Absolutely.
PTSD, trauma. You're
Yes.
it's mental scars.
Yes.
Just like if you got like a broken arm or gash or something,
Yes.
that's a physical scar. PTSD and trauma is a mental
A
scar that will,
hundred
you
percent.
can't physically see it, but it'll always be there. Um, so after that, leading into your first deep relationship
Mm-hmm.
and marriage, I was reading almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Can you open up about that? My initial question with that is, over this 30 years, how did you finally come to like the conclusion of letting it go and choosing to heal and move on from that? It seems like you felt like you were stuck
Oh,
in that.
absolutely. I didn't see it that way at first, though. Again, coming out of that childhood in that house, I was very determined, and I was ambitious, and I was in college. I was getting my degree in journalism, minoring in psychology. I was going to help victims of abuse. I even tried pre law for a while. I fell for this young man. Ironically, every red flag and siren and warning bell was going off literally the second I met him because he reminded me of my stepfather. And I was like, oh, hell no. But when you have been starved of love and you feel like nobody will ever want you and you were told nobody will ever love you and you're a burden and bother, you shouldn't have been born, blah, blah, blah. Somebody shows you the slightest bit of attention, you latch onto it. You latch onto that, every tiny little crumb of it. And so when he paid me that slightest bit of attention, I latched onto it. I fell right into that web and never let go. And he wasn't trying to let me go. I didn't know what a narcissist was back then. I mean, certainly my stepfather is one, and that's a whole other thing. But this person that I ended up spending a good part of my life with, he was a covert narcissist. So it was a little bit different than my stepfather. So I saw it, but it was presenting differently. This was presenting as humble and, more baiting me into pumping up his ego than overtly telling me how great he was, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That makes sense.
for me, I feel like looking back, it was like a perfect storm because narcissists like servitude. They like to be the one and only. Your life revolves around them. It's all about them always. And that was fine for me because I was a people pleaser. I needed somebody to be pleased with me and approve of me and want to have anything to do with me. And he was telling me he loved me. He was telling me all the things I needed to hear because he obviously saw right through me and saw what I needed. So he was giving me what I needed. Whether it was genuine or not is a whole other thing. But I was hearing the words that I needed to hear to feel validated and to feel worthy of somebody's attention in this world. So there was that. And then there were the bad times. He had kind of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing going on. So through the course of this time, there were good times and things were good. And he seemed very loving and affectionate and we would laugh and we had some great times. But when it was bad, it got bad. Started with just something flying across the room. The problem is that a normal person that came out, and I hate to use the word normal, so forgive me for using it for lack of better words, but somebody who was raised in a healthier situation, in a healthier dynamic in childhood, would have probably said, you crossed the line, nobody treats me, they're setting a boundary of expected behavior and the way that they expect to be treated. My boundaries were very loose because I wasn't trying to, cause somebody to come into my life and then leave because I had the abandonment and the attachment issues. So every time something bad happened, it was just a little bit worse. Just slightly, so that it crossed a boundary, and he knew he was crossing it, but it wasn't so bad that it was a deal breaker for me. Where the problem lies is that when we're talking about this stretch of time, that very first bad thing he did was just a CD flying across the room at my head. He whipped it at me. But at the end of that time, we have guns and knives and police. And so, we're going from it's like every time it gets a little worse, so that it's kind of like I always say to people, it's like gaining weight. Like one day you weigh this much and 5 years later you're like 10 pounds heavier. You're like, how did that happen? Because you don't see it. You're unfazed by that little bit every day. The abuse was the same way. That's what it's insidious that way. So it just kind of crept in a little worse every time so that I didn't leave. And what makes me sad looking back is it wasn't all that stuff that happened between. It wasn't a crowbar being swung at my head. It wasn't the prescription medications and being dragged to the bathroom hoping I would die. It wasn't, all these millions of things that happened, and there were so many. It was when I actually got sick. My own body turned against me. And that was, we were almost 20 years married. We had been together 5 years before we got married. But I had had so much stress in my life. I was constantly in fight or flight that the stress, the cortisol, the stress hormone was actually pumping through my body at such high rates that it caused my white blood cells to think it needed to eradicate something. So they eradicated themselves. So I became autoimmune.
What?
Oops. We're
That's crazy.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, so I had so much cortisol, stress hormone running through me at such high rates
Yeah.
that my body thought it had to eradicate something. The white blood cells ended up killing themselves off.
So you
So
were
I got sick. I became
okay, yeah.
autoimmune. I developed a lung disease because of this high cortisol, and the lung disease is like having COPD and fibromyalgia all at once. And that was the point for me that for some reason, I don't know why, I cannot explain that. All these horrible things that happened should have been the reason that I kind of woke up and realized that this was not a good situation for me at all. But it was when my health went down because the doctors basically sat me down and said, all of your organs are basically shutting down. Like your body is doing everything it can to breathe and keep your heart beating, but we can't give you a pill. We can't give you a surgery. Like whatever is in your life that's causing you this much stress, it needs to be resolved. So figure it out. And I mean, again, in my marriage, I didn't tell anybody what was going on. So I knew what the answer was, and the answer was getting rid of my husband. So I just had to kind of look at things and see, like, I mean, I didn't get married to get divorced. It wasn't, it was less than
Yeah.
ideal, but I took my vows very seriously. There's a million reasons
Yeah.
why people stay. We had a son. I loved his family, and his family were amazing people. I loved them. His mom and dad, they were the parents that I wished that mine had been. They had taken me in and it just welcomed me as if I was their own daughter. I mean, I wasn't, it's not always as easy as just leaving that person. It's very
Yeah.
complicated. So I hadn't been able to do it prior to that, but I knew that staying in that situation, staying in that marriage with him, was not going to benefit my health. And I didn't want to die and I didn't want to suffer. And I mean, I was on a backpack oxygen machine just to breathe. And I shouldn't be. When I coach cross country and run 5 miles every day, I shouldn't be on oxygen. I shouldn't be struggling, to walk and to stand up. And, I had dropped down to 93 pounds, which looks great in a bikini, but that's not healthy for a 47-year-old
Wow.
woman. Yeah, it was scary. It was scaring people, and it was scaring me to see people's faces when they saw me. So,
Oh wow.
that's when I just said, okay, this is not even my life. This is not what I thought was going to be. This is nowhere near what I, ever wanted in my life at all. And so that was when I made the decision that, it was time to divorce and I had to
So
cut
it really
contact.
wasn't. Yeah. So it really wasn't like necessarily a direct influence from your relationship, but it was. It kind of was. It was
It
like an
was and it
indirect.
wasn't. It was my wake up
Yeah.
call. It was my body telling me, like kind of slapping me in the face and saying, you already know what this
You need to do
is,
something.
but
Like you need
like
to
we're
change
going to kill
something.
you
Yeah.
if he doesn't. So, I mean, that sounds
Yes.
terrible, but it was just like,
No.
my mind had suffered so much that my body was suffering, and my body was just like, we're done with this. Like, you're putting
No.
us through the ringer too, and we're done with it.
Yeah.
So it was like, kind of crap or get off the pot kind of a thing. As terrible as that sounds, I don't mean to minimize it, but I'm glad that it happened because the miraculous thing was that even though we went into the shelter in place for COVID like 2 weeks after I talked to an attorney about filing for divorce. So I couldn't even get a divorce because the courts were closed and everything else. And he threatened my life. And we had 2 incidents of domestic violence even after the divorce finally went through. But the beauty of it, and this speaks so well to the mental and physical correlation in our bodies, the mind body idea, literally within a month or so of him moving out, I wasn't having symptoms anymore. I didn't need the backpack oxygen machine. Like
It's
I was
crazy.
gaining my weight back. Like
Yeah.
everything just it's always going to be an issue. They're irreversible health conditions, but all the symptoms dissipated. They just went away like they were never there. And it literally like he was literally toxic to me,
Yeah,
physically,
literally.
mentally,
That's where the
literally in
word comes
every
from.
way.
Yeah.
Literally. And I don't think people realize that. Like, you think, especially like, women, we think we're doing something noble, honoring our vows and keeping the family together for the kids. And I'm not dismissing that. I was that person. There were faith issues for me. Don't get divorced. You're Catholic. Catholics don't get divorced. And I didn't want to give up his family. I didn't want anybody to be upset with me. But it just came to the point where I had to have enough self-respect. And I obviously hadn't had any that whole relationship. But, when my body, and I only have one body in this life, like when that was being stripped away from me and that was being taken, I was like, okay, like you took my soul, you took everything out of me, you sucked my life, stole just, but you cannot take my physical health. You cannot take my life. That is where I draw the line. So that's what it was for me. And it wasn't the ideal awakening, but I think it's important for people to know about this. And that's
Yeah.
part of why I wrote my book and why I do these interviews, is to let people know like stress really can kill you. And sometimes that stress isn't the job and it isn't, something. It could be that person. And for me, it was three people. It was mom, stepdad, and husband. And I took all three of them within a year's period, cut all three out of my life. And
Oh
I'm
wow.
still standing, and I'm a lot
Yeah.
healthier, and I've been able to heal. I've come actually a really long way in my, mental health journey, because I could, there's this saying, you can't heal in the place that got you sick. And you literally
Mm.
can't. You cannot heal
No.
from trauma when you are still associating with the people who are causing you that trauma or who did that to you. It's just not possible.
Yeah, you have to let go. You have to
Yeah, I'm not a
let
fan
go,
of
yeah.
letting go because I unfortunately can't. My health said, screw you, you're not letting go. Like every day, I don't have the symptoms anymore, but still do have some issues every once in a while, and they're stress triggered. But, so
Mm.
every time I get reminded of the people that did this to me, or when I am having a day where, my mind kind of takes me a few steps backwards, I know where that came from and I know who's to blame. But I think that's the
Yeah.
beautiful part of this and what people need to understand. And this goes back to my flippant comment earlier, that I'm not messed up. I don't like when people say I'm broken, I'm damaged. Nobody's
Yeah.
broken or damaged. You're affected. But I love what you said earlier about the mental health being similar to physical health, because that people don't see it that way, but it very much is. If you want to have muscles, you eat more protein, you lift weights. I'm being honest, but mental
Yeah.
health, we all have things we want to do and improve on in our mental health, but people don't. Um,
I don't think they
they
know
don't
how.
give it. Yeah, well, and I don't think a lot of people really care, because most people think mental health means
You're
you
crazy.
have mental problems. Exactly. Like, I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but I'm
That's
remarried and I've known my husband's family for 20 years, and they're most of them, not all, most of them are lovely people, but some of them have their ideas about mental health are so archaic, and it makes me sick when people make you feel bad, because like some of them have um you know well, there's one in particular that actually wanted to stop the wedding. She tried to stop me from being married into the family because apparently, the things I have been through, the trauma that I've dealt with and everything makes me unworthy of being one of them. And it makes me sick to think that people look at mental health that way, because I'm never going to be ashamed. I don't care what you call me. Give me every diagnosis under the sun. Call me psychotic. I'm not, by the way, but even if I was, I'm still who I am, and I'm still worthy of love, and I'm still worthy of living a full, life and I still have
Yeah.
potential. And I think too many people get caught up in the stigma other people put on them. But when you think about it, where does mental health or mental health suffer is where it comes from other people. I feel like it's other people's shame. Like I look at my mother and stepfather, they have unhealed trauma from their pasts, from their childhood, but they're not willing to take accountability for it. They're not willing to even acknowledge it. So they put that burden on me. They
That's
put that shame
yeah.
on me.
That's just making it. That's like basically the way I look at like trauma. If it's not um, if it's not processed, like, and like, I guess if that door is never opened, um, it will basically it'll come out in other ways of your
Yeah,
life.
it perpetuates. That's where the
Yeah.
transgenerational trauma comes in because it just perpetuates to the next generation, whether it's through behaviors or through, teaching somebody to respond to things in this way or that way. I think people forget too your body. I mean, the physiology you cannot ignore that, like this cortisol that made me sick. I didn't realize actually until very recently that that participates in this transgenerational trauma too. A pregnant mother who is enduring abuse or some kind of trauma will have that cortisol pass to the fetus, and the fetus
Mm,
then becomes addicted to that cortisol. So you
uh,
need stress. So like let's look at self-sabotaging behaviors and
yeah.
people who, kids who act out to get attention, they are looking for that rush of cortisol. I'm not saying always, but in transgenerational situations, that is something. And I wonder if that is the case for me because even in my current marriage early on, I
Hmm.
had to kind of stop at myself because there were times when everything was fine, but it was like, okay, in my head or in my body, I needed to have chaos. I needed conflict to feel like this was love because that's what I had known for 40 some years. So I mean, I remember the first time I created conflict with my husband was over a damn bottle of ketchup. And I don't even remember what I created out of a bottle of ketchup, but he literally just put one hand on the wall and just looked at me and I'm having a moment, let's call it. And when I was done, he was like, "Are you done?" And I looked at him like, "Well, aren't you gonna react? Aren't you mad?" And he just started laughing and put his arm around me. He's like, "No, it's ketchup." And we
That's
walked
your
away, and it
current
was
husband?
fine. Yes, and God love
Okay.
him. That's what I need, but he has taught me, these things. Like so now I can tell when I'm starting to get that antsiness. I'm like, that's that cortisol. It's that fix. I hate to say it's like a
Yeah,
drug
it might
addict.
it might
Like you
be
want that high.
biologically
It
passed.
absolutely is.
Um, but no, I was gonna say, yeah, about the trauma thing. The people who leave that door closed and never process it, they are subconsciously giving it more power. And they're not,
Absolutely.
they're, I think it gives you more power when you face it, and you become liberated by facing the trauma, like no matter how afraid or shameful or whatever feeling you'll feel when you face that trauma. I think it's more freeing when you face it opposed to keeping that door closed and it having perpetuating, like you were saying, across all your relationships and how you show up in the world, easily
Yes.
getting triggered or defensive. That's
Oh, it
trauma
presents
not,
all over. Yeah.
yeah, that's trauma not fully healed and processed.
Absolutely. But what I have noticed is there is also a generational aspect to it as far as
Mm.
like I'm Gen X and I notice my husband's older. He's like
So you're a
baby
boomer?
boomer and like he's a boomer. He is so a boomer. But we love him. Um, but the boomers and beyond and upward of there, again, there is such a shame and a stigma to
Oh
mental
yeah.
health.
My
They
mom's a
don't
boomer.
look, yeah,
Yeah.
they don't look at it like how we look at it. Like we're trying to be better, we're trying to improve, we're trying to flex our mental muscles and be the best us we can be, and all this other stuff we say. To them, mental health is like if you acknowledge that there's something mentally you need to fix, whether it's behaviorally or whatever it is, that's just like it
I
immediately
think
goes to
that
what you said. You're crazy.
I
You
think
have
that just
problems. There's something wrong with you.
yeah, I think that just goes back to the times, like
Right.
during their childhood and teenage years,
You
mental
had to
health
suck it
was
up.
yeah, and mental health was still a new like kind of science. Like we didn't
Right.
have anything that we have today back
It's
in the
sad
boomer
though.
times.
I
Yeah,
mean,
so the
boys
people
couldn't
that did
cry and girls had to,
exactly.
stop being so sensitive and suck it up. And I mean, in my generation, there were all those sayings, I'll give you something to cry about. You were told,
Uh
we were basically all taught to suck it up, di- subdue it. And even now, like, even as I'm writing my books and doing podcast interviews and being very open about my experiences, I have people in my life that are like, oh, you're not supposed to talk about that. Stop being so negative. I'm like, I'm just being real. Like, if I can't, but that generation and
uh
up, you're not supposed to acknowledge it. I call that polite society. You're not supposed to speak of it because if you don't, ignorance is bliss, my friend. If you don't speak of it, it doesn't exist. And then everything's sunshine and rainbows and we're just going to pretend. And I think because I had to pretend growing up and because they tried to do that to me, I am just so
over it.
opposed to that
Yeah.
idea. I feel like truth is where growth happens.
hmm
Truth is when you do have more self-awareness, and
Control.
I think exactly, and that's
hmm
where you can be the better you, and you can, and I think also there's something to say, and I've only learned this recently since exiting my former marriage, is that when you are living true to who you are and authentically, as we say, you don't have that unrest when you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about if you're enough or too much, or don't say that all these rules. If you can just be who you are and stand firm in that, and you're good with who you are, you don't have that unsettling in your soul. You don't have regrets. You don't have all these things that basically hinder people from living a full life and being really, truly content. And so, hopefully people can understand that and seek to have that because it's such a
Yeah.
better place to be.
I think it's like the way I think of that is like a peaceful confidence. Like you
Yeah.
have a peaceful confidence within knowing who you are, all your flaws and positive
Yes.
traits and everything.
Yes.
There's a peaceful confidence and contentment that you feel that you're okay with being yourself.
100%. Because I mean, I have this thing that I say now that, like, I lived most of my life not being good enough. I wasn't good enough for my
Mm,
mom. There's nothing I could do to this day that's good enough for my stepfather. Then there's other people that I'm too much. I'm not
mm,
supposed to say this, and it's not polite to say that, and I'm to this and to that. Guess what? I am me. I'm not going to change. I want to be better. I always want to be the best me I can be. But the people in my life that love me and truly love me for who I am, I'm just right. You know what I mean? And they do accept me. And the thing about it is we all have things that aren't exactly redeeming qualities. We all have quirks. We all have great things to
yeah.
offer the world. But the people, our tribe, and unfortunately, they're not always our mother and our father and our family. Sometimes they're not your husband or your wife or whoever, but your real people. They are going to see you exactly where you are, and they're going to meet you there, and they're going to help you rise above that. They're going to want more for you. They're going to cheer for you. I always liken it to like being in a garden. Like if I'm a flower, I had to pull all those weeds out, all those toxic people that were sucking the life out of me and covering me and subduing me and overshadowing me and preventing me from growth. Once they
Yeah.
were out of my garden, all these other people, the sun shined, and I
The
could,
clouds came
suck
out.
up the rain, literally. But those are the things that help you grow, and those are your people,
Yeah.
and that's where you thrive, and that's where you live, and that's where we should all want to be.
100%. I agree. No, that was like a perfect analogy. Um,
Oh, thank you. I try.
how can a victim of narcissism and narcissistic abuse begin to understand and heal that process?
Well, they have to want to understand and heal that process. Um, I tell people it's kind of like when you do an intervention for somebody with alcoholism or drug addiction, honestly, because not everybody wants to heal from it. Not everybody wants to leave the situation. My mother is a perfect example of that. She honestly, wholeheartedly believes that she cannot have a life that she would want to have without her narcissistic husband, regardless of the abuse and regardless of the control and everything else. She stays in it, and she will not leave it. And I've met other people that are perfectly, I don't want to say they're happy, but they choose it for whatever their reasons. And so if somebody
Yeah.
wants to leave it, what I always recommend is just to ask yourself a simple question. Just say, what do I want? Because the problem with narcissism is that narcissists dictate to you, whether verbally or non-verbally, you are basically being dictated at everything in your life, what you can eat, what you can wear, where you're living, what you're doing for work. Everything you do at home, everything is regulated, restricted, dictated. I mean, it's their way or the highway, except you're not allowed to leave. So you have to just stop and say, what do I want?
Mm.
Because everybody has something, even if it's just one thing. Like for me, that was the question I laid there and asked myself that night after the doctors were like, you got to figure out what's causing you these. I mean, I knew, of course, what the problem was, but when I asked myself what I wanted, it was three things. I'd always wanted to be a writer. That's why I went to school for journalism, and I still knew I wanted to do something in the realm of psychology, helping victims of abuse, doing something in that realm. And I wanted
Mm.
to be married. I just didn't want to be married to this guy that was threatening my life, that was causing me all these, mental and physical problems. So the funny thing is that when you have something that's so dear to your heart, whether it's a
Yeah.
goal, something you're trying to achieve, whatever it is, once you see those things, you can't unsee them. So even if you're not consciously working towards those ends, you are subconsciously working towards those ends. Because if you want something bad enough, you'll make it happen. If somebody that's 300 pounds wants to be 200 pounds, if they want it that bad, they know how to get there. They will figure it out. They will get there. They will achieve it. When somebody wants
Yeah.
to, go from the projects to having a college degree and being a doctor, they will figure it out. They know what to do. They get there. If you want something bad enough, you will make it happen. And so for me, it was making it happen. And I wasn't
Mm.
even trying that hard, but I kept my eye on the prize. I knew I needed to get divorced. I knew I had to get safe. And so I did that first. And then I could take a few more steps forward. Then it was like, okay, I have this journal. I really think it would be important to share my experiences with other victims of abuse. So now I'm using my writing, my psychology, all this education and background, and my life experience to help other people. So now I've published a book. Now I've got two more books written that I'm trying to publish, and it's only been what, 3.5 years since that divorce. That's a short time frame, and my health has turned around miraculously because I'm not living in that toxic situation, and I'm remarried, and that's weird because I never thought I would be actually remarried again. But having known him for so long, that took out the courtship and dating and trying to figure
Oh
out the
yeah,
trust stuff and all that. So I just got
I'm still
lucky in
trying to
that
figure
end.
that
Yeah, it doesn't go away. And I'm going to tell you, I did
out.
marry him, but even he knows the trust issue. Like, there's only two people in this world I 100% trust, and he's not one of them yet. I trust him quite a bit. He's almost there, but that takes time. That takes time and a lot of
Oh, yeah.
you have to earn that with somebody like me. But
Mm,
life is good, and that's the thing, is that narcissistic abuse, just, I think what's so traumatic about it is that it's not just like in my childhood. Yes, my stepfather's the king of all narcissists, but it was verbal abuse and physical abuse. It was just those two. Whereas with narcissists, they will use any and all types of abuse. So I mean, he was, yes, there was verbal, physical, emotional, psychological. The gaslighting was
mm,
crazy, coercive control. There was legal abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. I mean, and like, people call it walking on eggshells. And I was like, no, I was walking through a minefield, because everywhere I stepped, no matter how lightly I tread, something would blow up, but I could barely recover from that when something else was blowing up over here. And it just,
yeah.
you don't, your head is spinning. And that's why they call it crazy making, because I mean, you cannot process anything. Everything is coming at you so fast and happening so quickly that, like, I started submitting not because I'm submissive, but because I just needed peace. I just needed a minute to breathe and to think and to keep things calm for my kid. And like, it was just like, fine, whatever you want, that's fine. I will do that. I will do this way. Whatever you say. I won't have friends. I'll live here. I won't work. Whatever it was, just, let's just please give me something. I
Mm,
remember so many times saying, can I just have one
mm,
day without something happening? And it wasn't possible. And that's the sad part. And it's constant and constant and constant. Whereas, at least in my childhood, there was a day
you
where I
had,
was
yeah.
physically abused or verbally abused, and then maybe not for a few days. Then it would, and I'm not saying it's right, but with narcissists, it's constant. It's multiple
Yeah.
times a day, every day, and you just, I mean,
Yeah, you
I'm
have to
exhausted just even
you
remembering
have
it.
to um eventually make that choice to
Yeah.
to cross that line, make that boundary for your own
But
livelihood.
right, but
Yeah.
people in those situations with a narcissist don't have boundaries, and that's the problem. And they don't see it. Oftentimes, they don't even see it as abuse because it's just life.
And they're
I remember
comfortable with it. Yeah.
you become comfortable in the chaos. Yeah. And I mean, I remember putting a post on social media once, and it said something to the effect of, this, and this, all these things happened, but it was just another Tuesday. And it was just
Mm.
another day in the life.
So, what do you do now? What do you do today that, like, do you have any mental health
Yes.
exercises that help you, like, just be and stay enlightened and positive and, you know,
Yes.
yeah.
100%. I have two that I can think of. One of them is basically what got me out of my situation to begin with. And it's just that question, what do I want? That has been the
Mm,
simplest but most effective thing, because what I found in my healing, obviously with my childhood and my former marriage, there's anxiety, depression, PTSD, there's all kinds of stuff going on in my head. So I had to kind of pick and choose where I wanted to start in my healing once I was out of all that. And what I realized was that self-regulation was the key, because whether I was triggered by something or if I was in a situation socially that just gave me so much overwhelming anxiety, like I was sweating and my heart's racing and like I just felt like breathe, like, I just needed to self-regulate. Uh-oh.
Hey, sorry.
Uh-oh.
You're
Okay,
freezing
here
there
we go.
again.
So
Okay.
I'm unfreezing
Self-regulate.
now. So self-regulation was the key. And I found the easiest way to self-regulate because, I mean, there's rewiring and neurons and stuff going on in your brain that's, and I'm not good at science, but if I just stopped in that moment, whatever was happening, and say, what do I want? Whatever the answer was, would solve it for that moment. Maybe it was there's too many toxic people in this situation. So I came, I saw, I was here, I did my thing. I'm going to give myself permission to leave now. I need to get the hell out of here. That was self-regulating for me. Maybe sometimes it was just taking a break and just being like, okay, I'm going to walk out of this room. I'm going to walk, or like even with my husband, if there was something that was getting, he doesn't get heated, but, with anybody, if something was escalating and it was starting to make me nervous and tense, it would just be like, okay, we can have this conversation, but I need a minute to go breathe. Like I need a minute, and giving myself that permission. So what do I want? I don't care if it was a banana popsicle. You have to just sometimes stop and give yourself whatever that is. It could be a hug from this person, or removing yourself, or saying, okay, I really don't want to go to this thing, but I'm going to go for part of it. I'm going to drive separately so that I feel comfortable that I can leave without affecting anybody else, whatever it is, but just saying, what do I want? What do I need right now? Because if you ask yourself what you need, you're good, and you're giving yourself that. And I think if you do that, it's also empowering, because it reestablishes your control over your mind and your behavior, and you're able to, present in situations as the best you. And then the second part of that, it actually goes right along with this, is giving yourself that break when you need it. I remember I'm pretty good with, I honor all my commitments, but like last month, for example, there was a day that, I was writing about some stuff in my childhood. It was just really making me thoughtful and taking me back to just some stuff that I just needed some time to process. And I wasn't going to give the best interviews. And I had 2 podcasts that day. And it was just being like, okay, look, I normally honor all my commitments, but like, I just need a day for me. I just need to unplug, no phone, no nothing. Like, I just needed a Dana day, I call it. And sometimes you need a Dana day.
A day and a day.
Dana day. So I think it's just giving yourself that permission. Take a break when you need to, because if you push and you try to, again, force and, put the smile on anyway, you're not going to be the best wife. You're not going to be the best mother. You're not going to be the best interview person. You're not going to be at your best. You need to be in a good headspace to be any good to anybody, including yourself. So I think we all, and I don't care who you are, you could be the king of the universe and be physically and mentally fit. We all need a day to just sit back, unplug, and breathe. And if you need that, you need to do it and not beat yourself up about it, because there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't make you lazy. It doesn't make you, any less than anybody else. It doesn't mean you're crazy or whatever. It just means that you need to reset. I mean, my God, even my stick vacuum runs out of a charge once in a while, and I got to replug it in before I can vacuum anymore. And that's kind of how it is sometimes. You just need to stop for a minute.
It just means you're human.
Exactly.
That's it.
But we're hard on ourselves. I know I'm the hardest on myself.
I'm not. I mean, I'm like...
You're like, I'm not. I'm gonna Netflix and chill right now.
No. Like, I have discipline, but I also, I mean, like we're just human, you know.
We are.
Like I'm disciplined, but there's times where I'm not extremely disciplined, and I think that's just life, you know. Like you don't talk to like the healthiest person in the world that's jacked and ripped. They have a pizza and burger sometimes, you know. Like it's not like
Absolutely.
you're not always going to be 100%. And I love this exercise that you give to people because it's honestly just a reflection exercise. Like it makes you respond and show up as the best version of you and not react as somebody that you may regret in retrospect because of your emotions or trying to
Right.
fake or whatever, push through like you're saying.
Yeah.
That could actually cause more, that could have a more detrimental effect because you're not allowing yourself to feel the emotions that are coming up. You're burying them under the rug. So you have to process
Yeah.
them. You have to feel and ask yourself, what do you want every day if you have to. This exercise reminds me of, I don't know if you heard of Mel Robbins, but she wrote a book
Yes, of
called
course.
The 5 Second Rule.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of that. Like this thing is just, it's an exercise to get self-aware, you know, like
Yeah.
wait a minute, like take a step back, take a breather, and ask yourself, what do you want? And just start showing up as that person that you want to be.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it has saved me from full-blown panic attacks. It has saved me from going down that proverbial rabbit hole that, we can sometimes find ourselves spiraling downward in and unable to get out of. And it
Yeah.
does. You just got to stop and take a minute and just say, okay, what is it that I need right now? Obviously, I
Mm,
need something. That's why my mind's freaking out on me. What is it that I need? Do I need soothing? Do I need something? And I mean, I'm not being funny. Like, I joke with my husband that I'm like a baby. Sometimes I just need a damn nap. I mean, sometimes I'm just
I need
that tired and
a nappy nap.
exhausted, and like I just need an hour of sleep. And then I wake
Nah,
up and I'm
I feel it.
rainbows and sunshine again, and life is good. But we need that recharge. Sometimes we need to give ourselves permission to do that.
No, that's amazing. Um, but I'm gonna lead into my conclusion here and
Sure.
final. I have kind of like the beginning. It's like a structure that I have. I started something new that I think would be fun with you. I think you've been through so much and you really are doing a service to the world because I don't think there's a lot of people that have been through what you have. I mean, everybody's different. They go through their own
Right.
stories and paths. And I think what you're doing is amazing. And it's
Thank you.
more people like you are needed in this world, to be honest.
That's really sweet. Thank you so much.
But I'd like to play my game first, and then we could ask the final question. So I have this
All
game
right.
called Where Should We Begin by Esther Perel. She's one of my favorite like relationships psychotherapist. But it's a game of stories, and the game is simple. We're not gonna play the full game. We're just gonna play one piece of the game.
Okay.
There's one story card, and the story card, or there's one prompt card, which is an instruction that sets the mood for the story. And then there's one
Okay.
story card, which is the inspiration for the story. It's the spark of the
Okay.
story.
Okay.
Okay. So it's completely random. I do it every time. This is the prompt card.
Okay.
So the prompt card is share something out of character, and then you have to wait for the story card. These are also completely random. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, it could go anywhere, to be honest. Share something out of character. Oh wow, this is kind of crazy.
Uh-oh.
Share something out of character. In my family, the power lies with. It's kind of, I don't know if you can see it. Share something out of
In my
character
family.
that in my family the power lies with. In my family, the power lies with.
So I'm just
Hmm.
supposed to go off from there. I mean, because I can
Yeah,
tell you
yeah.
where my mind is going. So in my
Out of
family,
character, though. Out of character. In
well,
my
I
family,
guess
the
this
power
is,
lies with.
yeah, I mean, where this is going with me is back to my childhood. I feel like the truth is such a core value to me because the power in my childhood family was the lies. That's where the
Hmm.
power was, and I the truth held no significance whatsoever. But it was hard for me because I went to private Catholic school where lying is a sin, don't lie, respect your elders, honor thy mother and my father. But my mother and my father were lying, to me, lying to authorities, lying to, achieve things and attain things. And it was so hard for me to keep all that in and to
Hmm.
play the role I was supposed to play out in front of family and out in front of the world, and just letting people believe things about us that weren't true or about me that weren't true.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's necessarily a story, but that's where my thought process goes with those
No, that's
cards.
fine. Right. The first thing that comes to mind when I hear that, in my family, the power lies with is like, what is like the default like mood of your family? That's what
Mm-hmm.
I get. Like, okay, every time I go visit my mom, um, I mean, I'm more graceful with my mom now. I just have fun with her at this point. But my mom is also kind of narcissistic. Um, but it's just something we've learned to accept, and you can't focus on things you can't control. When you just accept, sometimes you accept people for the way they are because you can't, it's not in your power to change somebody, you know? So you have to, I don't know,
Right.
just let go of that control. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, okay.
That's no, I was just saying like in regards to that
Yeah.
prompt and story question, that's my take on it.
Yeah,
Every time I
100%.
go home and see my mom or whatever.
Yeah, and that makes
Um,
sense. But you can't control everything. And I think it's important for people to know too. I mean, we've been throwing this word narcissism around like everybody else does, but not all narcissists are bad people. And there are people that have narcissistic qualities that are not actually narcissists. And,
mm,
so I think just kind of like you were saying before, like we all come from different life perspectives and geographical areas and ethnicities and, childhoods. Our background plays so much into it that, what resonates with us is different for every person. That's what makes us unique. So, if one person is, even if they are a narcissist, they might be fine for this person and not for that one, but that's okay. And I think that's
mm,
part of, what you're saying too is you can't control anybody except for yourself. And if that means removing you from a relationship with somebody or from a situation, then that's your choice. And that's the
mm.
beautiful part of being an adult, is that you can make those choices for yourself, and you can decide what you want.
Yeah, that free will. But
Exactly, it's a beautiful thing.
but here are my final questions that I
All
ask
right,
every guest. It was awesome having you on, though. By the way.
thank you.
Um,
We made it through. We're
so
forging
the first
ahead.
question is,
Oh, biggest regret is honestly When my son was about 2 years old,
Mm-hmm.
my then husband had actually moved. I mean, he got a moving truck, moved out of the house. He had a girlfriend, he got an apartment, and he was telling me he's young enough to go start over with her and marry her and have a family with her. And this is a terrible thing to say, but my biggest regret is that I didn't let him go. I was so, as terrible as our relationship was, I was just not willing to let him go that easy. I did everything and anything that I could to basically bring him back into the house and bring him back into the marriage and bring him back, into the family. And I feel like looking back, I wish I would have just let it go. I think it would have done it would have saved me from the physical health issues I have. It would have saved me
Yeah.
from a lot of, things that happened and the suffering mentally, and it would have saved my son. I think at 2 years old, he wouldn't have the memories, the
Yeah.
unpleasant memories that he unfortunately developed, because I waited until he was 17 to finally get us out of that.
Mm.
And I think that he might have. My son is doing well, by the way. Never did drugs, never got involved with alcohol, even in college, and very successful socially and at work and everything. But I feel like I did us a disservice by forcing that marriage when it was just it was over before it even started, honestly. So
Mm.
that's my biggest regret.
Next question is, who or what has made the biggest impact in your life that makes you who you are?
Absolutely, my great grandma. I mean, I talked about her a little in the beginning, but I think for me, she was the first person in my life who showed me what love really is. She showed me strength. She showed me resilience. There were things that she had endured, but even back then, I mean, gosh, she was born in what, 1918, but she was a savage, tough little lady, let me tell you. And she I mean, she got divorced from
Savage.
her first husband back when it wasn't okay. I mean, it really wasn't okay to divorce, but she
Yeah.
wouldn't listen to anybody's opinions or judgments about her. She held her head high. She showed me not to be ashamed of myself, and to be strong and stand firm in who I was. And I thank her for all of that, because I think that my life could have gone so differently. I may not even be here, honestly. I might have taken my own life, at certain points, if I didn't have that fire in me that told me, no,
Mm.
these people are not going to determine who I am, and these people are not going to determine what I am worth. I am better than this, and I am more, and I'm going to keep fighting for me, even if nobody else is. I got that from her.
And what were the years that she was in your life? Because I
Well,
just want
she
to get
took
a
me.
perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. It was from birth, from the time I was
Yeah.
born until I was about 5, I would say. Right about
So
5
she
years
had
old.
that big of a influence on you
Yes.
from, man, that's just proof that that's proof that we're we could be like so much influenced by
Oh,
people at
100%.
such a young age.
People don't realize psychologically, and this is proven over and over, by the age of about 7 years old, a child is wired for, I mean, they have
Mm,
determined gender roles. They have determined, I mean, the way their family dynamics, the way the world works, their thoughts about
it's
how
crazy.
everything is by
Yeah.
7 years old. So, I mean, certainly we're affected after that, and the more self aware you are, the more pliable you might be,
Yeah.
to improve or change. But yeah, it's kind of scary to think that we are basically molded that at that little of an age.
I mean, amazing though that you
Yeah,
had somebody like that, because if you didn't, man, it'd be
yeah,
like a
I
whole
know,
different story, you know? That'd be a different story
completely.
of somebody else.
And I mean it. I might not be here because there were times in my life, there were several times, honestly, between somewhere around my early teen years to even a few years ago, that I honestly, if I had had the nerve to take my life, I would have.
Mm,
I wanted to. I remember when I was a
you
teenager
didn't
wishing
because
that I had the ability to take my life because I just didn't want to be here anymore. I just didn't want to live this life. I didn't want to feel the pain anymore. I didn't want to hurt. But I couldn't do it. Well, thank you.
I
Well, that's
never would
great
have met you.
grandma's. That's great grandma's doing.
No, that's your doing too. You can't give her all the credit.
Oh, I do though. I love her dearly. I mean, she's everything a mother should have been, and she's, still with me even though she's not here. She's always with me.
Oh
She's
yeah,
so
yeah.
much a part of me, and she absolutely shaped who I am. But I appreciate that. But that's something not everybody has, and some of us don't get that even that young, and
Yeah.
so
I had
I'm
something
grateful to her
similar,
for
which is
that.
kind of crazy.
What's that?
Yeah. Uh, uh, so I'm half Filipino. We call our grandma Lola. I had
Mm-hmm.
a Lola that pretty much was there to raise me as well, because my mom was like a single mom, always working. Like she worked her ass off, which is something we didn't appreciate growing up, because she wasn't there mentally for us, but she was there like providing,
Yeah.
putting shelter. But
Right.
we couldn't go to her and be like, somebody like bullied us at school. Like we'd go to our
Right.
grandma, our Lola, and yeah, she same thing. Like she taught me love, compassion, faith, spirituality,
Yes.
Christianity, God. Despite her, also she's like 85 now, almost in her
Mm.
getting up there. She was like born in like the 1930 or something,
Oh my goodness.
and but this was completely different too, because she was born in like 1930, third world Philippines, like growing up
Yeah.
in a farm, like nothing, like barely scraping by. Um, but yeah, just something similar.
You know what I
She
love
had there.
about that though? My great grandma also, she didn't have a whole lot, but we
Mm,
made do. And what I love about that is it taught me humility from a young age.
mm,
That even when my mother and my stepfather attained things and they had a business, and, I would say I was very fortunate, much more so than most kids growing up. I mean, none of those material things really mattered to me. I would have rather had two parents who
yeah,
loved me.
right. Right.
But I never, and to this day, I never put too much value in things because I
Like
think we all
material.
need to
Yeah.
stay humble. Like, I will still, there are some nights when a peanut butter jelly sandwich is just perfectly fine for dinner, and I will
Yeah.
still eat a bowl of rice, and it's enough. And I'm
Yeah.
happy for it, and I'm blessed for all the fortune that I've had in life, but I am also thankful that I don't forget where I come from, and I don't forget that
Mm,
I don't need status and attention and things to validate me and to feel like I am something or that I'm worth something, because even if I'm just me with nothing but the clothes on my back and a bowl of rice, it's still good, and I'm good with that.
and we gotta have the
I love my white rice. I'm telling you. I buy it like 25 pounds at a time off
the.
Amazon. It's beautiful.
That's kind of crazy, because I'm the same way, like with my daughters. Like like we're surviving. We're not fully abundant and thriving, but yeah, I'll go to Sam's Club and because I that's how I was raised. My mom always had like a pot of rice cooking
Yes,
or something, and it was just easy, simple. Like you could
yeah,
always eat it. It's not harsh on the stomach. It fills you
exactly.
up. Add some soy sauce. At least for me, we added soy sauce, make it
Yeah.
some spices in there.
Yeah, we did the same thing. Sometimes it was tomato sauce. Sometimes there was, we do, with
Or
my
an
son, he
egg or
loved the soy
something.
sauce. Yep. My son does soy sauce, a little egg, and some broccoli maybe or something. He calls it
Yes.
fried rice, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, anything with rice, we're good.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's good. Um, but I'll move on. Next
All
question
right.
is, what is one lesson you learned the hard way?
Self respect.
Hmm.
You know, I think it was trodden on for about 45 years until I finally realized that that's what was going to help me survive and live. Because without my self respect, I would have stayed in that marriage. And honestly, if he hadn't killed me, I think my health would have gone so downhill that it didn't look good. So, you know, self respect is a tough one. And with that, I think it kind of tags along on that is setting boundaries. I never set boundaries. I was so afraid that people would be unhappy with me, and I could not do that. Everybody had to like me. I was that girl.
Hmm.
I would do anything, be anything. I would never say no to anybody. And I just started that a couple years ago, and it was scary because I started to see people who I thought were like my people becoming upset with me or removing me from their life altogether. But setting
No, I
boundaries,
hear
you know, I might
you.
have lost some people. So, you know, and it sucked, but at the same time I realized that well, they were using me. They were using me for
Hmm.
my people pleasing and not really caring about me as a person, and they fooled me. So it's still sad to mourn those losses and mourn those relationships, but setting boundaries has protected me from all those unsettling feelings and anxiety and all kinds of things. It's like a form of self-respect. People call it self-care, self-love. I say it's self-respect. It's respecting myself enough to say, you know, no when I need to say no, or no when it's really, really inconvenient, you know, and maybe offer a different solution, or saying no, you don't get to speak to me that way. When you're ready to speak to me respectfully, we'll have this conversation. And it's hard to do that when you've come from an entire life of wanting people to be happy with you and not wanting to upset anybody. But you know what? If you don't respect yourself enough, how the hell is anybody else going to respect you?
Facts.
Yes.
The way I look at it is like, man, I just go back to that analogy. Um, you just always have to fill your glass first before you can fill other people's glasses. So me,
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I feel like I've just learned through trial and error and just going through things, but um, yeah, you got to fill your cup first.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I just never did that before. I filled everybody
Other
else's cups,
people's, yeah,
and I didn't even try to fill mine because there was usually nothing left to fill mine. And so that was a tough thing to undo after, you know, decades of doing it the other way. But it feels much better. I don't have the anxiety. I don't have the upset, and, you know, people treat me a lot better because I don't tolerate people that don't treat me okay. You know, I'm not king of
well,
the world, but I do expect people to have some respect and courtesy.
there was somebody that on one of my previous podcasts, they actually put it very good. They said like you're actually doing more people a disservice by people pleasing because you're not fully showing up as a full you.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's 100% true.
you're not even, because you're not filling your cup up first, you're only giving a half or empty, partially filled version of yourself to each and every person. So that's actually more of a disservice because you're not
Yeah.
fully you.
Well, and that's where I go back to that little thing I said about taking that break when you need to take a day
Mm,
or take a minute to
yeah.
recharge. Because if you're not working, if you're not good, then you can't be good to anyone else. If I'm exhausted and tired and stressed out and all this stuff, how am I going to be a good mother to my kid? How am I going to be a good wife to my husband? How am I
Yeah.
going to give a good interview? How am I going to write a good book? I can't do those things. So I think that's where that comes in, is being able to say, okay, I got to do me for, like they say on the airplane, that you put the
Yeah.
oxygen mask on yourself, because if you're not breathing, you can't put the mask on your favorite kid either. You just got to figure that out. So you breathe first, then help everyone else.
Yeah. Stop gasping for air.
Oh, thank you. Love the reference.
uh, but next question. There's two more questions.
Okay.
Next question is kind of just like a off the cusp free one. What would you want to experience in life if you had all the time and all the money?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know. My thing is, like, I'm most at peace and most like calm standing on a beach on a sunny day and just looking out at the water and the sky. And like, when we go on vacations or whatever, I have to go somewhere tropical, but I'm one of those weirdos that's on the beach at like 6 a.m. where there's like one random person jogging because they jog on
Oh yeah,
vacation, which is just
there's always
silliness. There's always
there's
that
always
one that you're like, dude, you're way too
like
motivated.
what
Like,
is
go
going
have a
on?
drink. Yeah, we need to go do a tequila shot right
There's
now. Like,
always
relax. But I'm always that other person that's just standing there, like with my arms out, like Jesus, like just submitting myself to the world and the universe. Because for me, it's so humbling to, just to see the expanse
Mhm.
of the water and the sky and everything, and to know that you're just this tiny little thing in the world, but at the same time, as little and tiny and insignificant as you are, man, you can just have this impact. It just, I don't know, there's something grounding but empowering about it. So to answer the question fully, if nothing were
Mhm.
impossible, I wish that I could live on a house or a little hut or something on a beach, to where I could do that every day, to where I could have that grounding, and the same at night, because I live in a rural area now, so at night, there's no street lights. There aren't even really that many streets. It's all gravel roads, but looking up at the sky at
Mm.
night, it just makes you feel that same thing, because it's just black sky and you see every star and everything, and it just makes you realize, that you're just
It's
this one
grounding,
little
yeah.
thing on this planet. It is grounding, but it also motivates me, because I'm like, man, I'm this tiny little thing, but what I want to make an impact on this world. What can I do to impact this world? I start in my house with my husband, my kid, but even on these podcasts, it's like, what can I say? If I can influence that one person and have that domino effect, and make this world a better place somehow, then it's like, boom.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm glad I brought you on, because we share the same that's the same like mission that
Yeah.
I'm trying to do. Um
And we're reaching people one at a time, one little star at a time, one little piece of sand at a time.
no, that reminded me. Well, firstly, you should get out of Illinois and go live somewhere.
Dude,
Uh,
I
cause
wish.
that bring you more peace and happiness, you know.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
but no, that just reminded me because I was in the Navy and we would go
Mm,
on deployments, literally like middle of the Pacific Ocean where you don't see nothing, 360 degrees, like
I
nothing
bet.
but water, um, for miles and miles and miles and miles. And yeah, just I get the same feeling when I was
Yeah,
out there.
it gives me chills thinking about it, but absolutely. But no, I will say this. My husband knows that I need that in my life, and it doesn't matter whether we have the money or not. He will take me anywhere I want to go at any, if I, and I mean it literally, if I told him right now, I want to go somewhere tomorrow, we would be on an airplane. He has never denied me that. We travel a lot because he knows I need that in my life. So we have that compromise. So I do have that sense of
Yeah.
peace because I'm here for him because he wants to be by his kids and grandkids, but he gives me that same,
Mm, okay.
reciprocation of, okay, let's go to an island, wherever it is, or just some beach. Let's go somewhere and give you that. And
Yeah,
so,
that
no,
makes
I'm very
sense.
fortunate. But yeah, believe me, as if I could just live on a beach, life would be good.
No, I mean, I like Austin. There's a lot to do here, a lot of networking and business opportunities. But yeah, we don't have that.
Yeah.
We have like we have rural areas and like ranches and areas like how you are now,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have that like peaceful serenity beach where you can just
Yeah.
go and like relax. Um, but yeah, final question, and then we'll close out. Is there any last insights you'd like to share about your journey that you'd like to resonate with the audience?
Last insights. I would say that I really just want people to release whatever shame they're carrying with them because, I think I said it before, but that shame that we carry is usually somebody else's shame that they asked us to carry for them, or actually, they're not even that nice. They usually just hand it to us and say, here, like a hot potato. But none of us should be ashamed. I mean, whether you do have mental health issues that you need to improve on, and whether you have physical health issues you need to improve on, I don't care what your situation is. There's nothing about any human being on this earth that makes you less than or makes anybody else any more than what you are. And every single person in this world is worthy of love and worthy of affection and attention and achievement and accomplish and whatever. But I think that we take people's shame on, unfortunately, involuntarily, but then we carry it. We choose to carry it for them. And if we can just realize that it's about the other people and not about ourselves, then it can really transform how we talk to ourselves and how we see ourselves. And that's kind of the first step in, the right direction and to healing and to becoming better.
Dana Diaz, everybody. Uh, Anywhere you'd like people to follow you or go check you out?
Sure. My website's probably the best bet, danasdiaz.com. Links to Facebook and Instagram are there. You can also email me if you do stuff the old fashioned way. And there is a link to my book there, and sign up for the email list so that you get updates on the next two books. They will hopefully be out by the end of this year.
Go check her book out. Go check her book out and her future books to come. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
And as always, everybody, stay curious and keep going. Peace.